First, a little background. I'm old and I've worked in retail for almost 30 years at various places, so I'm familiar with a large variety of point-of-sale systems. I'm also not particularly fazed by idiots since, well, retail. This event takes place in a store that I frequent fairly often, and I'm on a first-name basis with the owner since we chat quite often, and we're fairly friendly with each other. The store is a fairly sizable mom-and-pop thrift store. This happened a couple of years ago. Everyone that works here, including owner and the part-time staff, wear aprons with the store's logo on them. So, to the event, owner had just bought a new point of sale, going from an old-school analog register to touch screen with all the bells and whistles. I came in and she wanted to show it off since we had spoken about it previously. I told her it's a good system. I've used one similar to it, etc. I go about my shopping and owner comes over and asks if I can help her. She can't figure out something on the system. I go over and show her real quick. No big, go back to my shopping. Now cast of characters. Me, Karen, owner. As I'm browsing, I hear, Karen, excuse me. I move aside thinking she needs to get past me. Her again. I said, excuse me. Me. Sorry, did you need to get past? No, this shirt doesn't have a price. How much is it? Sorry, I don't work here. You work here? I just saw you. Sorry, I really don't work here. I turn around and try to walk away. I hate rude people. She grabs my arm and yanks me around hard, left some lovely bruises. I told you I want a price for this. You need to let go of my arm. I don't work here. Go away. I saw you at the register. You work here. I know the owner. You better do your job. At this point, I'm mad and tell her to go do that in some colorful language. She pulls the how dare you card and is getting loud. So the owner comes over. Owner, is everything all right here? Karen, this expletive won't help me and was very rude. To be fair, I want her fired. Ma'am, she doesn't work here. Owner turns to me and says, everything okay? Me, not really. She's nuts. I show her the red marks on my arm and tell her about how I got them. Karen now doubles down on her rant about me working there, wanting me fired, etc. Owner says to Karen, you need to leave. If you're not gone in 30 seconds, I'll put my foot so far up you can finish the rest. Karen keeps ranting on her way out. Owner tells me she's sorry and I'll be getting a discount. Tell her it's not her fault not to worry about the discount. We chat for a bit. I continue my shopping. You'd think that was it, but oh boy, was it not? Turns out Karen called the cops from the parking lot claiming she was assaulted in the store. Cops show up about 20 minutes later, asking for the owner. Karen stayed in the parking lot. Owner tells them straight up what happened and offers to show CTV. Cops watch the footage and ask me if I want to press charges. I so do not want that time sink, so I decided to leave. As I'm leaving, Karen gives me the stink eye in the parking lot. Now, that could have been the end of it. Went back to the place a few days later. Turns out Karen started ranting at the police for not doing their jobs because I wasn't arrested and or fired. Proceeded to make a scene with the cops and got arrested for disturbing the peace and resisting arrest. The owner also had her car towed from the parking lot. Edit. Okay, some people are not okay with me not pressing charges. The reality is that I don't get paid time off. I don't currently own a car. The store is a 30-minute walk from my house, so I use it as an excuse to get my introverted fat self out of the house and help me lose a little weight. And pressing charges would likely cause me to lose work hours. It's not worth my time or the stress involved. And seriously, I work in retail. I've been yelled at, grabbed, and threatened with physical violence over minor nonsense that I have no control over, that I just let it roll now and let karma do its thing. So last month I was in an accident where this guy misjudged his turn, radius leaving a parking lot, and hit my back bumper. His car was completely screwed on the right side. His front right tire popped, and the entire right side of his car from completely scratched and streaked with my red car paint. I knew there was already some weird crap going on because when he pulled over, 2 Korean dudes came out of his car and literally just walked away. Keep in mind, this dude is a 50-year-old Middle Eastern man, but I was so shook up at the time I was just like, what the hell? Okay. We got out, exchanged information. He gave me his personal insurance, took pics, and said that we would be in contact about next step. I filed a claim literally an hour later because, that's what you're supposed to do, not like what this guy tries to freaking pull. He contacted me that night and asked that we figure this out between ourselves, that he's a nice, reasonable guy, that he just graduated law school. I don't know how this was relevant in our conversation. Maybe he was trying to imply he'll get me. That he has no money, blah, blah. I was like, oh, I already filed the claim, and immediately his tone changed and he got all upset. I knew that he was going to screw me over. His insurance company called me a few days later saying that their client hadn't filed a claim yet and only knew because my adjuster contacted his adjuster to inform them of the accident. So they asked for my side of the story, which I gave honestly. They told me that they are obligated to give their client 14 days to contact them back before making a judgment. This was already 4 days after the accident, and I was like, what the heck, this driver is sketchy as heck. A few days later, I got a call from their insurance. They determined that liability was 100 on me. This freaking driver lied about everything. He lied where the accident occurred, lied about coming out of a parking lot, and claimed that the damage occurred when I merged into his lane. He even freaking claimed that there were no passengers in the car. I was furious. How can he just try to pull this crap on me? The pictures obviously show the damage, and his story doesn't even make sense for the damage done. He probably thought that he lucked out because he was a 50-year-old man and I was a 20-something girl, that he would be able to use my inexperience against me. Well, screw that. Get wrecked, son. My insurance company tried to reason with his adjuster, but because there were no witnesses or dashcam, it became a he said, she said battle. But my adjuster wouldn't give up. She was like, screw it, he didn't have Uber Lyft stickers on his car, but let's just file a claim for both and see who contacts us back and try to poke holes in his story, and lo and behold, Uber contacted us back. They asked me about the accident, and I was like, so here's the deal. This dude didn't give me his Uber insurance. He gave me his personal insurance. So I'm just here asking if you can confirm he was working for Uber at the time, because he's straight up lying to his personal insurance. And the Uber adjuster was like, okay, this is a different situation because we thought this was a by-the-book accident. So now I have to go back to Uber and file an inquiry for more info. That was a week ago. On Monday, I got a call back from Uber confirming that he had passengers in the car at the time and that he was driving for Uber during the accident. Oh, heck yes. I call my adjuster, who then calls the driver's personal car insurance adjuster to let them know that this crap about to go down. My adjuster calls me back and basically says that his personal insurance is dropping their claim. Their only focus now is to get the money back that they gave for his repairs. My adjuster then tells me that the driver essentially committed insurance fraud by lying about everything, and that he could have been trying to double dip both Uber and his own personal insurance, and that now this dude has a whole set of other issues to deal with. She tells me that his personal insurance is going to be contacting Uber and getting more info before moving on, but I get the impression that this dude is screwed. Got a call from Uber literally yesterday after I sent in estimates for my repair, and they're going to hook me up next week with a rental car and pay for my repairs as soon as possible. I'm so thrilled and had the biggest justice boner ever, and it was freaking fantastic. I know I was lucky because if it wasn't for those 2 passengers, I likely would have been screwed. I only have liability insurance, and I'm definitely going to invest in dash cams, but hell, this was a journey for my first accident. I'm going to be living off this schadenfreude for the entire year. My boyfriend and I invited and planned a small trip to the beach to celebrate my college graduation, since there was no ceremony due to COVID. We invited my mom and brother, 16, as well as taking our dog. I was worried and talking to my boyfriend weeks in advance about how I'm worried about my mom acting out during the trip, since she has a strong history of it. Doing things like disappearing, spending days in her room and not speaking, screaming at us in public and starving herself so we worry and feel bad. All of this back when we were little kids. Anyway, we were in Mexico for our trip, since me and my boyfriend have traveled here before many times and both speak Spanish. Mexico is very COVID conscious, and we've been doing our part as well, with masks on always, sanitizing and washing hands, social distancing, and only eating outside at non-crowded restaurants. Plus 3/4 of us are vaccinated. Mom has never been out of the country, and we were happy to take her. Last night, we went to eat at a nice restaurant where my boyfriend and I ate for the first time when we had started dating. I knew he wanted to propose. He told me to get dressed up nice and just dropped a bunch of hints. I told my mom and brother as well, so my mom wouldn't feel unprepared or underdressed. We get there, and we, of course, want to eat outside because 1, COVID, and 2, we had done that when we first went there. She immediately begins complaining that it's too cold to eat outside. It's like 85 days since it's seaside, and tells us to go inside instead. We were annoyed but agreed, and we could tell it was way too hot to eat in there almost immediately. I tell her this and also remind her there's a special reason we want to be outside. And she snaps to me that if we want to eat outside, we can, but she isn't going. So I say, okay, we will eat outside, not with any attitude, but in that way you handle an annoying customer in retail. As we go back to eat outside, she literally storms out of the restaurant crying, my poor younger brother chased after her, and I guess was telling him I was making this trip all about me. Anyway, the kitchen is closing, so I order her and my brother some food. She comes back 20 minutes later and says that she's never doing a road trip with us again, and then of course refuses to eat even though she hadn't ate since 2 days prior due to her being mad at us that she couldn't bring weed. It's very illegal, and she'd go to prison, and was complaining that she already wanted to go home to smoke. Boyfriend tells me in the car he's sad because he didn't feel like proposing in front of her since she was just sitting there oozing hatred, and we both felt sick. Anyway, I could have been a fiancé last night, maybe some other time, I guess. Update. We did get engaged, secluded on the beach looking for sea slugs with our pup. My mom apologized, but I still feel very conflicted about it, and I definitely want her to go to therapy before ever meeting our kids, and I want to have a real open and honest discussion before our wedding. This behavior really isn't excusable or appropriate for anyone, but especially not a mother toward her daughter. For those of you asking why she was invited, it's because she would have been invited to my college graduation, and I wanted my brother to come. I am the only one in my family to even attend college, and I want my brother to see that it is possible for him as well. I'd also hope that after moving out at 18, or I should say being kicked out, that she would have grown up a bit, but we still clearly need space between us. To me, if anything, this proves to me that my future husband and I will be able to withstand anything and won't let anyone come between us. About 3 weeks ago, I made a post about my mother pulling another one of her situations. When it happened, I thought that her audacity couldn't possibly reach new heights. But as always, I was wrong. All of my previous posts are about my piece of work mother. She always says how she only wants the best for me and similar things. Yet she never behaves so. What stands out the most is what she did and said to break me up with someone who simply doesn't fit her. I'm going to call her Eva. Eva is a part foreigner and has a skin condition, vitiligo, on a large part of her body, including face. For me, she is the most beautiful and amazing person ever. I'm happier than ever with her, and I love her more than anything or anyone else. Still, this isn't enough for my mother because immigrant family and skin bad. In the past few months, my mother developed vitiligo herself. I thought that it would help with stopping her nonsense, and once again, I was wrong. Some of the things my mother has done: numerous insults towards Eva, making our lives hell for 1 month, publicly insulting her, trying to get me together with someone else, downplaying her serious accident and past issues, so to speak. I don't really want to elaborate. I have, of course, always done my best to protect her from my mother's nonsense. I don't really think that we'd be where we are now if our respective families weren't on our side, and Eva wasn't so amazing. Context over. Apparently, both me and Eva blocking her on several occasions wasn't clear enough because my mother made another account on Messenger only to harass us again. This happened on Friday through Saturday. My mother messaged both of us, messages to me. Still, I think that you're making a big mistake by making a commitment so early. How can you know that she's the right one? Perhaps if she changes herself, you'll like her more. Here are some suggestions. Be less pushy with how she looks. As in, cover up the vitiligo and dye the chunk of white hair caused by it. This is complete nonsense. I find it beautiful. Less trashy and more feminine clothing. I think what she means is that Eva should stop wearing things like oversized t-shirts, hoodies, or band merch, which is just absolute nonsense. Be more respectful and less foul-mouthed. Stop playing video games and doing sports exercising, because that's not what women do. That's what my mother said, not me. I hope both of you think about yourselves. Messages to Eva. I can tell that both of you are serious, but please consider doing something my son would like if you did, which is yet again nonsense. I love Eva exactly how she is. Same stuff as above. So we read the messages. Eva was about to do one of her favorite things, cussing the hell out of people. This time, my mother for the audacity and insult when I thought of something better. Several hours later, Saturday, the idea was to get back at her by using her own list. Eva chose this time for 3 reasons. To do it without being interrupted, to spite her, and to fuel her petty side. I know for a fact that my mother has her phone on, do not disturb during the night. So, no, we didn't wake her up, nor did we intend on doing so. What I wrote: I'm glad that you think of me like that, wanting the best for me, but 1, just because you're insecure about yourself doesn't mean that she has to accommodate your insecurities. 2, I have no problem with her clothes. 3, try to not be a witch towards her if you want her to respect you. 4, again, you're just insecure that she isn't a couch potato, unlike you. She doesn't have to accommodate your insecurities. And you're just sexist. Instead of focusing on what you think is wrong about her, you should focus on yourself. You're in no place to tell her what to do or to change about herself. What Eva wrote: nah, he'd tell me himself if he wanted me to change, so quit it. I'm no one to you, you're no one to me, so you're the last person to tell me what to do. I'm sure your son already wrote it, but just so we're clear, unlike you, I'm not insecure. I'm happy with how I look. I'm not going to accommodate your insecurities. I missed the part where my clothing is your business. That's what you get for being a witch. Video games are for both men and women equally. Try doing some sports yourself. I hope that I made myself clear. We haven't blocked my mother immediately afterwards. to see her reaction and to be certain that she read it. She did indeed read it, and as you probably have guessed by now, she wasn't happy. We woke up to 5 messages from my mother, all saying how disrespectful we are towards her just wanting to help. Knowing that she saw our messages, we blocked her without answering. Were we disrespectful? Yes, I know that. No need to slam me for that in the comments. However, after what she has done in the past and this audacity to try and dictate Eva what she has to do, I believe it's justified. I regretfully got an apartment with what is, in my opinion, the worst landlord ever. This man has the audacity to call himself a good person in court. Let me fill you in. I got an apartment shortly after being released from prison. Happy that someone is going to give me a chance to improve my life? This was clearly not the case. All was well for the first few months. Then winter hit and the heat went out. It took 3 days to get him to even answer his phone. By that time, his voicemail was full of complaints from his freezing cold tenants. He told me the law gave him reasonable time to fix it. We went 2 more weeks with no heat using our stoves and camping in the kitchen in our respective apartments. When he got his electricity bill, he attempted to raise the rent on the apartments. Obviously, he was not allowed by the city, so he refused to pay his electricity bill, thus denying all of us heat at all. This is where my OCD kicked in, and I went full research mode. I studied every law in regards to federal, state, and city landlord tenant laws and rights. I found so many violations it was no longer funny but scary. I studied building code. I studied the condition of all of his apartments. This was easier due to the fact I was either friends with his tenants or had gone there to repair damages caused by frozen pipes and electrical outlets failing due to shoddy wiring and so forth. The landlord had pissed off all of his tenants. Every last one was pissed to the point where they wanted to testify against him in court, but couldn't due to the financial hardships the living conditions we were in had been causing. I formulated a plan to get him to repair the buildings he owned, but he had his own plan. January 2nd at 2 a.m., I was awoken by the smoke detectors and the whole building going off. I quickly ran to the back hall because no smoke was in my apartment yet, but I was on the top floor. I opened the door and was greeted by a thick wall of smoke. I quickly ran downstairs after shouting for my girlfriend at the time to get out of the house quickly. I pounded on every door and screamed fire. I got as many people as possible to evacuate, but the floor with the fire no one was answering, and to my knowledge contained children. So I panicked. At this point, the fire department was there and began breaking in doors. I evacuated. After the fire was out and the investigation had started, I witnessed the landlord give the tenant of that apartment's sister an envelope containing an undisclosed amount of cash, which was visible to anyone nearby. 2 weeks later, the results were released. Arson, the tenant, had used hairspray to start the fire and hid the evidence in a hole she punched into the wall. The very person who'd been given money by the landlord. Ironically, she was the only tenant who had paid rent in the whole building because she had started moving in 2 days prior. I had not known she was now a tenant, and her sister and kids had moved out the day before. I looked at him and told him I know what he had done, and I was not going to rest until he lost all his buildings. I then began asking his tenants for their stories about their interaction with the landlord. This is where things got real. He had been accused of everything from ripping off employees, theft, grand theft auto, bank fraud, and so much more. I formulated a new plan. I sucked up to him and made it known I'm a computer tech. The landlord had a few broken computers and some printer and network issues. We worked a deal on payment for back rent. I knew he was not good for his word, but it was all part of the plan. Once I got his passwords and logins, I copied his entire hard disk drive to my portable one. I copied all emails in his business account and printed his financial records on my Wi-Fi printer, which was next door. After I fixed his computers and network, I then went home to review my newfound evidence. It was enough. More than enough. I contacted code enforcement with all of the violations of code for every building, including the illegal electrical installation in his new office without permits or even an electrician. He was immediately investigated. That night, I found a 7-day notice to quit on my door. My roommate was worried, but I filled him in on the plan. Remember I studied all those laws and rights? Well, we get to court and I open with your honor. I have proof of a clear violation of the Warranty of Habitability Act. The eviction was thrown out, and he was forced to repair my apartment with me, still in it immediately. The next month, I was given another eviction notice. Still, he is losing money due to the fact I was teaching his tenants landlord-tenant rights and the laws associated with it. The jerk kept losing his court dates and kept being told to fix stuff and was continuously fined by the courts and the code enforcement. He was sinking fast. Back to that fire, the woman living there was arrested for arson and charged with 2 counts due to the accidental electrical fire on New Year's Day that turned out to be ruled intentionally. So the hairspray was in reality attempt 2. He was under investigation for conspiracies, arson, and other charges. I wasn't done yet. We went to court again for my non-payment of rent. I won again based on the Landlord's Retaliation Act because I had contacted code enforcement and could prove this blatant retaliation, and the judge didn't even listen to him. Needless to say, spending the winter without heat took a toll on us tenants. We bought electric heaters and informed the power company that the landlord had shut off all the power to all his buildings and was requiring the tenants to pay for their own power. Well, apparently his illegal wiring caught up to him. He had wired apartments to run off each other, and the common areas were now attached to wiring in every apartment. This put the landlord in a rough position, as local law says it's the landlord's responsibility to supply power to all common areas. This means his shoddy workmanship and illegal wiring prevents him from legally disconnecting the power. The power company turned on all the power and locked his ability to shut it off until the wiring of common areas was repaired and separated from the apartments. This would cost thousands we knew he didn't have. The landlord was panicking. He kept losing in court, people were legally withholding rent, he couldn't shut off services, and the fines were debilitating. He kept blaming his tenants and refused to repair things. One by one, the buildings were condemned, and the landlord was required to pay for relocation of his tenants by law. Well, he didn't. He couldn't. He was arrested for attempting to sell 3 buildings the city confiscated from him and for selling one that was condemned. The landlord got what he deserved. He lost every building he owned, got charged with all kinds of fraud, and was investigated for other crimes I'm still unaware of. But I wasn't done. He caused a lot of suffering. I gave his financial records to the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, with all the internal memos and everything I got from his computers. Also, I provided the local authorities and code enforcement with the same things. The landlord was so screwed. I have since gotten a new apartment, and everything he owned has been taken by the city, state, and IR. I have not seen the landlord in 3 years, and all of his properties have been bought by someone new, repaired, and have all new tenants who are happy with their new landlords. The old tenants got better places with decent landlords. And what about our wonderful entitled landlord? He is serving multiple sentences for the crimes he has committed and is already not getting out anytime soon. Yet the investigations are not done, and the charges keep coming. The landlord is somewhere in some prison regretting meeting this tenant. Morale. Don't be entitled unless you want to meet the moral enforcer. Trigger warning. Mentions of drugs and Pete's D. This happened last week, and I felt you all on this sub would love to hear about this monster of a couple. Just thinking about this, I'm shaking in frustration and sheer astonishment at this level of entitlement. Meet the cast. Fake names.
Me.
Clem, my flatmate and close friend male. The intruder, entitled parent son. Susan, entitled mum, poshest Karen I've ever seen. Chad, entitled dad, he will let you know that he's a lawyer. Security guard, I know not very imaginative. Sorry. Manager, campus housing manager, a Karen's deadliest weapon. On to the story. This happened last week. It's the end of the semester here at university, which means that most of the students are rounding up coursework, presentations, and essays whilst preparing for the long revision nights of Easter break that we're obviously having after Easter. Safe to say that most of us, including me, are very stressed and are sleep deprived. It's in this context of mental and physical exhaustion that this story takes place. It has to be noted that my bedroom door sometimes doesn't lock. It needs to be pulled hard to be fully closed. And I happen to have forgotten to do this a couple of times, the night of the incident obviously being one of them. After a full day of reading and essay planning, I went to sleep at around 11 p.m. and fell asleep almost immediately. Like I said, I was absolutely exhausted. A few hours later, I heard what sounded like hushed footsteps near my bed. I'm a very, very light sleeper, and I'm awoken by the smallest unfamiliar noises. PTSD. One of the sounds I'm most sensitive to is footstep. Needless to say that my eyes shot open almost instantly. I turn around to see a silhouette of a guy I've never seen standing next to my bed. I could make out a bit of his face, nothing scary about his appearance, aside from the fact that I didn't know who he was, that he was staring at me in my bedroom in the middle of the night. I let out the loudest, high-pitched scream I think I've ever been able to produce, yelling at this dude to get out. He seemed taken aback but didn't react much, which made it even scarier. I was crying, hyperventilating. It seemed like I was about to die, have a heart attack or something of the sort. Before I had time to do anything, my flatmate Clem was in the room, also yelling at the dude to get out whilst trying to give me a shirt to cover myself. I sleep with minimal to no clothes, so Clem assumed the dude was trying to assault me. All the commotion attracted the security guard that was walking the halls. He separated everyone and took the intruder out in the common area to give me some time to compose myself and get dressed to explain what happened. Once Clem had managed to calm me down, I explained the story to the security guard, who told me that our flat's door was also unlocked, which is probably how the intruder got in the first place. The intruder was searched by the security guard, but he wasn't found with any weapons on him, so he was allowed to go back to his flat. All the commotion had woken up the rest of my flat and a couple of flats next door. The security guard ordered everyone to go back to their flats and to properly lock their doors. Safe to say, I didn't sleep the rest of the night, neither did Clem, so we stayed together trying to relax and forget about this very unfortunate event. Boy, do I wish it had stopped there. 4 days later, Clem and I are summoned for a meeting with the housing manager. When we got there, the intruder and who we assumed to be his parents were waiting. This was in respect of COVID regulations. Plus, we all had masks and were socially distanced in the office. I'll try to give you the conversation as verbatim as possible. Clem is helping me with that bit. Manager: good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your studies to meet with us. As you know, there's been a very unfortunate incident Monday night as the intruder broke into this girl's room, which caused them a great deal of fright. The intruder, Mrs. Entitled Mother, and Mr. Entitled Father, you've called this meeting to contest the intruder's expulsion from this housing following the incident. Is it correct? The entitled parents nodded, looking fairly confident. Manager: the intruder: on what ground are you contesting the expulsion? The intruder: the entitled dad, cutting his son off. You see, sir, my son is young. He made a mistake and deeply regrets scaring this young lady here and offending her boyfriend. Clem: I'm not her boyfriend. I wasn't finished. As I said, my son deeply regrets his mistake, but it was a mistake. Nothing illegal was found on him on the night of the incident, and his room was searched illegally. Thus, he should not be expelled from your halls. I'm a lawyer. I know the law. Manager: we will discuss this in a second, sir, but I would like to hear from the intruder, who I'm sure can speak for himself, and give us his explanation. The intruder looked at his dad, who gave him a nod, almost like he was waiting for his dad's permission to speak. The intruder: well, like father said, it was a mistake. I didn't realize I had walked into the wrong flat. I just noticed when I saw the girl sleeping that I was in the wrong room. And father says that the drugs you found in my room weren't seized legally, so you technically shouldn't be allowed to expel me. Manager pulled out a copy of the intruder's housing contract. They kept a copy of our signed contract for legal reasons, or in case we lose ours. He flicked the pages to the illegal substances and contraband section, which essentially says that any possession of illegal stuff, illegal drugs, weapons, etc., on housing grounds would be met with immediate expulsion. He then turned more pages to the room entering and inspections, which states that security and management are allowed to enter any room or flat for repairs or safety inspections with a 24-hour notice, but that for search, when there's suspicions of illegal activities, searches performed by the police did not require any notice. Entitled Mother: and under what suspicions did you call the police on my baby? This is ridiculous. You have no rights to use assumptions that he committed sexual assault as grounds to search him. Everyone kind of looked shocked at the entitled mother's reaction. No one even mentioned anything about sexual assault so far. That's what you call jumping to conclusions. Manager: ma'am, assault is nowhere mentioned on your son's expulsion notice. He then asked me, are we right that the intruder didn't try to assault you? No, he didn't try anything. We didn't even make physical contact. Clem: I made the assumption at first because I saw her was crying with a stranger, tall man in her room. It was late. I was barely awake, and that was the first thing that came to my mind. Entitled Dad: so you wrongfully accused my son of sexual assault? Do you know we could sue you for this young man? I work for insert apparently prestigious law firm name here. Manager: everyone calm down. No one is suing anyone here, especially since no allegations were made. It was something said in the heat of the moment. Besides, your son is being expelled because ecstasy and marijuana were found in his room on Tuesday. His room was searched because he admitted to the security guard that intervened that he was under the influence. Now, if you can't give me substantial evidence that the intruder hasn't violated his contract, we will end this meeting. Does anyone have anything to add? Entitled Mother: well, I have something I need to say. I think this young girl here should be issuing an apology to my baby for getting him expulsed. If she had measured her response to my son's presence and slept with some decency, none of this would have happened. Also, imagine how embarrassing it would have been for my son to realize you entered the wrong flat. What was he supposed to do? Clem: oh, I don't know. Leave the flat, me. Also, Mrs. Entitled Mother, I don't know how me sleeping with or without a shirt on would have changed anything. I had my covers to my chin, and I won't change my sleeping habits in case someone decides to break into my room at 3 a.m. The intruder: yeah, I didn't see anything in the moment. I only realized you were shirtless when I was taken out of the room because the lights were turned on. Mommy, please stop with that. Entitled Dad: son, don't speak to your mother this way. We're doing everything to keep you here, so show some respect. The meeting ended shortly after this. We left and the intruder was expulsed.